Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Well, as we said last week, it's time for requests. And we put to our patrons a small poll of a few movies, I think 4, that we were kind of interested in doing from that request list that we maintain. And the poll gave a tie to 2 things. The first one that we did last week was...
The initiation. The initiation. We just did that a few days ago.
Unforgettable film. The Initiation. And this week is Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse. This is from 1981, and I believe it was his first studio picture after, well, he did Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He did one called Eaten Alive, which I saw a long time ago.
I don't think I've seen it.
I remember it being pretty weird. But then there's this one, The Funhouse, which seemed to get a very wide release. Wow. So I had seen the cover art for this movie on the shelves, and the concept is interesting to me, right? Like horror in a funhouse. Mm-hmm. Really, in this one, I think it's less of a funhouse, more of a haunted house, I think you would call it, like a ghost ride.
I guess, yeah.
In a carnival. I don't know. I suppose I'm not going to dick around with terminology, but yeah, I had not seen it before today, actually. And that's that. You've seen this before, though, Craig, right?
Yeah, it surprises me that you haven't. I don't know. I probably saw it when I was in college or graduate school, but rented, I don't remember, either the VHS or the DVD from the video store. The cover art is creepy, kind of like a creepy clown kind of popping out at you. But I think it was the name, Tobe Hooper, that drew me to it.
Yeah.
Because I am a fan. He did Texas Chainsaw, and then just, a year or 2 after this, he did Poltergeist, which is one of my favorite movies. I love that movie. So I think I was just drawn to that. I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. I know that I've seen it at least once. I think I've probably seen it. Nah, that's a lie. I know I've seen it at least a couple times. But I was happy to revisit it for this. When I just watch movies for myself, I'm not worried about anything. I'm not thinking about much. I'm just watching the movie. When I watch movies for the podcast, I'm really paying attention. I'm trying to pay attention to the cinematography and the score and all of those different elements that we might want to talk about. So I was excited to watch this again to pay attention to those things, and I'm glad I did. And I, just based on your tone of voice, I feel like you didn't like it.
Yeah. I found the movie maddening. I have so many notes who are like, why in the world is this happening? Why aren't they moving? There's just so much in here that doesn't make sense, from the motivations of the characters to why they stand in place and scream for 5 minutes instead of actually do something. And it's almost, honestly, I'm kind of surprised that this is Tobe Hooper, because the guy's good. He makes good movies, but I wonder if he didn't get into a little rut there in the beginning where he just kept going back to the kind of crazy hillbilly or crazy, weird, twisted family thing. That's what Eaten Alive kind of was. Obviously, that's what Texas Chainsaw Massacre was. In this one, it's kind of the same. It's this crazy carny family that, is terrorizing these people. And just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I feel like he spends a lot of time on the pain of females. Women screaming and crying with their mascara going down, being menaced by somebody, and it's really uncomfortable. And it's very effective in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, really effective. You feel so bad for that woman, and then you hear some of the backstory of how he was shooting it, and it's it was pretty miserable for that actress as well. And so I couldn't help but feel shades of that here, except the production is slicker. Mm-hmm. Everything's a little lighter in tone.
Yeah.
Everything is almost, I hesitate to say, it just has shades of a kid's movie.
Yeah.
If it weren't for some of the gore and a couple of the small things that happen in here, it feels like a kid's movie. Yet, we get these long, uncomfortable scenes of just a woman screaming in pain and in panic, or somebody menacing him. And then, in one of these scenes, this woman's got to say some awful things to this guy to try to get her to to leave her, it just, tonally it's off for me. And also it just, like, not realistic. Like, of course, we talk about where's the line, right? Most of the movies we watch are not realistic. Of course, in the horror movies, everybody runs upstairs when they should be going out the door. But this movie had a hell of a lot of that in it.
Yeah.
And it got annoying by the end of it. Like, why is this person standing in place? Why are they not doing the obvious thing? And I think I was so distracted by those things that I got kind of bored. I turned off a little bit. And that's a shame, because actually I think the movie, like I said, is well made. It's got some interesting things in it. It's got some interesting cinematography. It kind of bounces between really good, inspired cinematography and really bland stuff. And then the final sequence. Oh, I know we're going to get to all this, but my God. The final sequence, I'm just looking at my watch. Is this over yet? Am I supposed to be terrified? And I'm watching, I read a review online, a couple reviews online that were just so glowing about this movie. Contemporary reviews, they were saying, and the utter edge of your seat, nail-biting ending. That was not where I was. I was laying half down on the sofa, buried under cushions by the end of watching the ending of this movie and couldn't wait for it to be done. So I don't know. That sounds very uncharitable, but we'll see. We'll see as we pick it apart and walk through it.
Yeah, no, I didn't hate it, and I should have, because once again, our wires got a little bit crossed, and I thought we were doing this 12 hours from now. So I ended up having to get up at 7:15 this morning to watch this movie. Like, I don't get up at 7:15 in the morning in the summertime period, and certainly not like to get up to watch a movie. So I should have been like in a bad mood and not enjoying myself. I think really you're not wrong about the story, but and I think the fact that I have like a half a page of notes, whereas usually like I have to struggle to keep it to a page because not a whole lot happens. But I mean, it's a story about some quote unquote teenagers who spend the night in a shady carnival funhouse, and like bad stuff happens, like murderers and stuff. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I'm not expecting.
I know you're not expecting a lot,
Dickens,
right? But I
right?
just want to be engaged with it, And I didn't. I just kind of got disengaged after a while because I was scratching my head so much. I feel like, sadly, there isn't a lot that I could find about this movie, like the details. Like, I think the trivia is pretty light on IMDb. The Wikipedia page is pretty light.
Yeah.
I have to feel that this movie got chopped up a bit.
I don't know.
It feels like there are whole scenes that I don't know why they're there, and there's kind of like sort of threads that just like everything with Joey and his parents.
Yeah, that was weird.
It just baffles me, right? It's just bizarre.
I wanted that to be something. It felt like it was going somewhere. It felt like movies from our childhood that had those kinds of rambunctious kid characters. Like, I thought that Joey was going to somehow become involved in the main plot, but he doesn't. like there's this whole setup. He's following his sister who's on a double date at a carnival or whatever, and he's following her, and he kind of sees some of the shady stuff that's going on, but it never leads anywhere. Like, he eventually just gets, I don't even, what happens to him?
They keep popping back to Joey as though, this is the kind of thing you do when it's like, oh, the cops are coming. Are they going to find them in time? Or is this going to be their salvation? They are staying the night in this funhouse. He doesn't know that they're doing it, but he seems to think that maybe they are. It's very unclear because it's like I think he sees them go in.
And not come out.
Them not come out. And
right.
To be clear, this is not a funhouse like you and I, when you think of a funhouse or a carnival, it's something you walk through and there are mirrors and this is like a dark ride. Is what it is. So there's a track and there are cars and you go into it and it's very, very spooky and then, kind of circles around and comes back. These are usually, they look way cooler than they end up being if you've been on any of these, because it's like all fits within like a one trailer, one trailer of a tractor
I
trailer,
know.
and they're so shitty usually. But God, they look so exciting when you're standing outside and you see the giant facade. Nevertheless, this supposed traveling carnival in Iowa has a fun house that they must have come there, I don't know, a year before to set up. They had to dig some foundation.
Oh, right.
They had to pour concrete. They have a lower level underneath it where people are living in. They've got tunnels underneath with venting and then way too much machinery.
Yeah, it's like a warehouse. It's huge.
Oh, my God. And there's a second floor, apparently. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, but you just suspend your disbelief for that, I guess you have to do. Otherwise, it wouldn't actually be that interesting.
Right.
So I'm happy to see.
Well, because in real life, I mean, God, there are so many things I think maybe partly I'm just kind of nostalgic for this because it reminds me of a different time. Like,
yeah, I know what you mean.
I live in rural Missouri, and these types of, like, smarmy carnivals came through here.
Yeah.
At least once a year.
And they're so fun.
Yeah. Like when I was a kid, like I wouldn't go near one of those today as an adult. Like I don't know. I'm sure there are regulations and stuff. You know, they still come here every year. But thinking back when I was a kid, it was like you see in the movies. Like they just look run down and like they're just held together with spit and shoe polish. Like when I was a kid, I just thought it was the coolest thing. And riding those rides that. It's like a miracle that I'm not dead because
right.
God, I have so many good stories. First of all, that you're right. It's not what I would consider a fun house. I think like fun house mirrors and like, you know, the shaky floor and stuff like that. That's a fun house. Right. But this would be, you know, it would be like the house of horrors, and you would sit just like in a little buggy, you know, on a rail, and it would take you through. And silly animatronics and stuff like that. I have actually no memory of this, but when I was a little tiny kid, my parents took me and my aunt and uncle and their kids, we all went to something. I don't remember if it was an amusement park or a carnival like this, but I was so young, like maybe 2 or something, and they sent me and my cousin Nick, who was a year older than me, they put us in one of these buggy cars to go through this house of horrors, and they just waited for us outside. And again, I honestly have no memory of it, but there is a picture of us coming back out like clinging to each other, like in a full body embrace, like screaming.
Oh, awesome.
We were terrified.
I mean, it was probably mostly dark inside. It probably lasted about 30 seconds. Every few seconds or so, you'd trip some light that would come on and illuminate like a skeleton, maybe one animatronic in the whole thing. They were usually pretty lame when you went through them, but like it's a lot in those.
Right. It's like a poor man's It's a Small World, you know, like it's super silly. But man, even though I don't remember that, like just the picture makes me so happy.
That's so cool.
I know, my parents were cool parents.
They really were. Sent you in by yourselves.
I know, it was awesome. And then another story, the janky carnival here in town. For some reason, my mom took us. I don't remember. Maybe we were going to like see a concert or something, and she's like, you can go ride a couple of rides or whatever. But it was kind of like cloudy, like a storm was coming in, and so she was like, you can go like, you know, ride some rides or whatever, but I don't want you to get on any of the big high rides because it looks like there's a storm coming in. And me and my sister were like, that's fine, whatever. And then we went, and I convinced my sister, like, she'll never know, let's just go on, you know, one of these big tall rides. And we got on it, and the storm like immediately rolled in, like lightning crashing all around us. Me and my sister up like, I don't know, 2-3 stories high in this thing, both of us crying. And I just remember looking down, and my mom had come to find us, and she was standing down there with her arms crossed, just glaring at us. And I knew we were in so much trouble. But I loved those kinds of carnivals. So maybe I was just nostalgic for it.
Well, I mean, look, the first few minutes of this movie I really liked. It had promise. It was a little derivative, but it was fun. And it's the kind of thing I like. You see this black gloved hand in this kid's bedroom, and this kid is obviously really into horror, and there are masks and things on the wall, and models and stuff and posters. And then there's like real weapons, like maces, and apparently a knife in a sheath, and all kinds of stuff on the wall. And this black glove goes and grabs one of those knives out, and a clown mask from the top, and puts it on. And it's total copycat of Halloween.
Yeah.
Now you see through his eye holes. And so we know it's a kid. It's totally fine. I liked it. And then cut to his sister, who I see in a bathrobe turning on the shower, and I'm like, surely this girl is not going to get naked because she looks way too young to have a topless scene in this. And she does. She takes her top off, and she was 19. I looked it up. She was 19.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked by that. I mean, Tobe Hooper doesn't shy away from anything, but I was surprised 4 minutes in. What surprises me more is that suggested to me that it was going to be a certain type of movie that then it was not at all. Like, these are the only boobs you see in the whole movie. And the rest of it, I would say, is pretty darn tame.
Yeah.
Like, if someone were to make an argument for why it should be rated R, I think I would have to concede. But there are really only a couple of things. For the most part, it feels very PG-13.
Yeah.
It's not super gory. There's not a lot of nudity. There's no sex. Like, the teenagers make out. Like, after she's already shown her boobs, Amy, later in the movie, like, she makes out with her boyfriend, and you can tell that she had her top open, but you don't see anything. Even the kills and violence are not gory. There's a little bit of blood, but not very much at all.
They're not as gory as we're used to seeing. That's true.
And it almost feels like the violence and gore feel like the kind of stuff that you would see in one of these horror houses or whatever. Like, you know, like a dummy with an axe in its head. Like,
right.
That's the kind of violence that we're talking about.
That's true. Well, I want to finish talking about this because there's a thing here that comes up later. So he approaches her, and it's total psycho, like homage, where he whips open the curtain and he goes in after her sister, and his sister, and then she holds his hand up, and there's this sort of struggle as the knife goes to her stomach, and then it bends. So it's a rubber knife, and she screams at him, tears his mask out, chases him out into the hallway, and gets him in a closet and yells at him and says,
"Just for that, I'm not taking you to the carnival on Saturday. And while I'm there tonight, you think about this. I'm gonna get even with you. You're not gonna know when or where, but I'm gonna get you so bad you're never gonna forget it. Never!"
All right. And I made a note of that. So she's chatting with her parents downstairs, and they're just kind of watching television, and they're warning her not to go. She better not go to the carnival tonight because those carnivals are dangerous, and this very carnival, like some killer was there. Somebody died, when it was
2 little girls
another town
went missing.
Yeah, and she lies and tells him, "Oh no, I'm just going to the movies with this guy." Joey overhears it and says, "Like, you are a liar." And then they end up at the carnival. So she piles in a car with a couple other people. It's her and Buzz is her boyfriend, a bad boy.
Her 40-year-old boyfriend.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be a teenager. I saw the actor was 30 when he played it, and he looks at least 30.
And she looks as 19 as she is. And then there's Liz, her friend, the blonde, and Richie, the goofball, I guess. He's kind of
whatever. They're just another couple. I mean, they just seem like nice kids. Like, none of them have any particular interesting qualities as characters. They just seem like nice, fun-loving kids going, on a double date to the carnival. It's cute.
Yeah.
And another reason that I thought that the Joey thing would amount to more is because he was such a cute kid. Like, I was interested in what was... I wanted him to be more of a part of the movie. But
Did you?
I have in my... Did I recognize him? No, should I have?
Yeah.
Who was he?
He was what, I can't remember the kid's name, Will or the other one in Jim. I think Jim, yeah, in Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's
funny.
It's one of the few roles he's had. I think he's only had 3 roles. It was this one, Something Wicked This Way Comes, and something else, and that's it.
This must have been before Something
Yes.
Wicked, I think. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That makes total sense. Super, super cute kid.
Yeah. And then what we get is just and I don't know, I liked it. A whole bunch of carnival footage.
Yeah, my notes say fun carnival stuff.
Yeah, and I just like seeing that. And plus it's classic carnival stuff. It's like you said, old rides. I read that they just bought out a whole bunch of rides from an old defunct carnival in Akron, Ohio. And these rides are like from the 40s and 50s, so they're not super modern, but they look fun. They're going around the merry-go-round, and they're doing the grab the ring thing, which I only heard about from my dad. I thought that wasn't even a thing as we got older. But when you're riding around on the merry-go-round and there's like a ring, like just kind of out of reach, and you're supposed to go out and try to grab it with your finger. Did you ever do that? Did you ever see anything like that?
No, but it's like the central metaphor in Catcher in the Rye, so I'm very familiar with it.
Oh, that's true. You're right. Yeah, you're right, English teacher. But at the same time, it's almost comic, and this is why I said it sounds like an old like a kid's movie. It's almost comical. There's a comically weird old hag lady that just kind of springs on the girls in the bathroom and is like, "God is watching you. He hears everything." And there's like an old bummy type guy who we see just once or twice who looks weird and stumbles into the girls at one point. You're like, "Oh, is he going to come back again?" No, not really.
Nah.
And then it's just so dumb because every time they come to something new, Amy stops and like goes off into La La Land. Like the carnival barker is going, come inside, see the 2-headed cow, see the freaks of nature. And she's just staring at him and the music swells and it's like he has her hypnotized. And like, then somebody's like, "Hey, Amy, you ready to go?" Oh, yeah. All right, here we go. And she does it for that guy. And she does it for the barker outside the adult dancing girls tent. And she does it just looking at the funhouse. She does it looking at the Frankenstein guy. Like, this happens like 6 times, this same shot. And I was like, come on. What's the deal with Amy?
God, I don't remember that specifically, but like what you're talking about is what I think saves this movie. Like, I think that it's really stylistic. I see Tobe Hooper in this movie. Like,
sure,
he shoots from interesting angles. He lights scenes in really interesting ways. Mm-hmm. And watching this, I was like, yep, this is the guy who's going to make Poltergeist in a couple of years. It's the same kind of creepy stuff. Like, the scene in Poltergeist with the clown that attacks Robbie, that could have been in this movie. Like, it feels... I just see... I don't know. I'm probably giving the movie too much credit, because it's not great. I mean, it's a really simple story, and especially... Oh, God. When we get to the villain... I guess. Is he? I don't know.
No, probably not. Not really.
Kind of, not really. It gets a little silly, and it is very simple, but I wasn't bored because I was so visually interested in what I was seeing most of the time. I don't remember long shots of her, but I do remember really interesting shots of the props and the set pieces.
There's a 2-headed cow. There's a giant fetus in a jar.
I was fascinated. Like,
I mean,
like, they go into this freak show where the barker outside. By the way, there are like 3 different things. There's the freak show, the girly show, and
the funhouse.
The
magic show. There's also magic
right,
show.
And they each have their own barker, and the barker is played by the same guy. And I don't think that I noticed that ever before. And I think that I only noticed it reading the trivia about it, because the guy who took the role took it on the condition that he could play all of the barkers. And if you notice, it just kind of gives it kind of a surreal quality. I don't know. I don't know.
It is surreal. I agree with you that it's stylistic in its own way. It's not artsy stylistic. It's just kind of, typical Tobe Hooper. Honestly, Eaten Alive. If I remember Eaten Alive, well, you're going to freaking eat that movie up because I remember it like this times 100 with just crazy-ass lights, crazy-ass camera angles, really odd, surreal things happening. We should do that sometime. But I don't know. For me, like, I was kind of ready for the action to start after a while. We're like 30 minutes in, and we spent a lot of time at the carnival. And I maybe I just feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like he was trying to build this atmosphere as this carnival as being this dangerous, scary place. What the carnival that I saw was pretty normal. It's kind of seedy. It's rather silly. There's this magician in there who looks like Beetlejuice. He's drinking during the performance. He's not at all sinister.
Right.
There's a fortune teller, and he goes to her, and instead of this being your typical fortune telling scene where she gives some premonition about what's about to happen, like you can see her reach under the table and flip a light off, and then she gets angry because the kids are laughing at her.
Out of here, you bad brat! I have performed in front of crowned heads of Europe! Don't come back or I'll break every bone in your fucking bodies!
Like, these are very normal people. You know what I mean? Like, they're honestly, typical carnival people. Not really.
I loved Madame Xena. Madame Xena was pretty awesome. And she's an Oscar-nominated actress. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
In real life, she is a Oscar-nominated actress. And I looked at her IMDb page, and she has tons of credits. And I recognized a couple of things she was in. The one off the top of my head, she was in She-Devil with Roseanne Barr and Meryl Streep. She played a character role in that. I recognize it. I liked her, and I liked this about it, that the carnival people were stereotypical, but also not necessarily portrayed as evil.
Correct.
More just kind of like opportunistic and dealing with things as they happen.
And they have a bad day, and they kind of lose their face. And I mean, what I was really hoping was that these would all be setups with payoffs later.
Right.
It did occur to me maybe the whole point of this was just to emphasize how normal this carnival is, how it's not an evil, sinister carnival. And that must be the point. But we're 30 minutes into this horror movie. We're a third of the way through it.
Yeah.
Nothing horrible has happened.
No. Yeah, it takes a while to get to anything. The carnival stuff, like the girly show, like I enjoyed that. That was fun to watch. They just used, strippers, local strippers they hired to be in that. And it was cute and funny. And again, it calls, that's even before my time. I don't know. Maybe it was going on when we were kids, but not in my local carnival. There was not a girly show. But, it was a thing. And
yeah.
Why do I have nostalgia for things that I didn't even experience? Like, it's just like a different time. Like, it seems like such a more innocent time, when
this was your entertainment.
Husbands would come home from work at the factory and go see scantily clad girls. I don't know.
Right. Well, you're a Midwestern boy too, and you grew up in rural America, and there isn't a lot to do in rural America, and that was sort of the whole point of the traveling carnival. I guess they would come outskirts of cities, but the heart was in the heartland, and this was when you get to see the promise of seeing things and experiencing things you could maybe only see and experience once a year because you're out in the middle of nowhere. So
right, but that's exotic, why even like there's literally a two-headed cow in this movie.
Yeah.
and a cow with a cleft palate, which is surely unfortunate for that cow. But I was just you don't see stuff like this. I don't know. Like that added a certain reality factor and a certain, because it felt a little more real, it gave it a little bit more grit. Like, I believe that this carnival exists. Now,
yeah.
So the guy who runs the entrance to the Funhouse wears a Frankenstein mask, and he's featured prominently throughout this first part, not doing anything, other than, like letting people off and on the ride. But I certainly got the feeling that this guy is going to be important.
Significant.
And the fact that he's masked adds, some level of mystery. But then you're right, it does just get stupid because Richie, one of the boys, is like, hey, I've got an idea. Let's stay the night in the funhouse. Why? Like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It doesn't sound like fun at all.
No, it doesn't sound like fun at all. You're going to have to sneak around, be quiet, because it's not like the place is abandoned, like the people who work at these places live there.
Stay there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're just going to have to be quiet. Like, sure, it might be fun to make out in the funhouse for an hour, but then what are you going to do?
You're right.
Stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid. But I do have, like, in bold, like I bolded it so I wouldn't forget to say it. The movie looks better. Okay, let's stay in the funhouse. Next note, definite Poltergeist vibe in the funhouse. Next note, in bold, this movie looks better than its time. For 1981, I feel like this movie looks like it could have been made yesterday. Like,
You think so?
I think so. In terms of the cinematography, it's clean.
That's true.
Granted, this is earlier in the movie. When we start to get into the quote-unquote monster, different story, does not look modern or contemporary at all. But up to this point, I'm just really impressed with Tobe Hooper. I don't really think of him. When I think of great filmmakers, I don't immediately think, oh, Tobe Hooper. But Steven
Right.
Spielberg does.
Yeah.
And Steven Spielberg is considered one of the greatest filmmakers of our time.
He wanted Tobe Hooper to direct E.T.
I know. Can you imagine?
I can't even imagine. And he didn't because he was busy on this movie.
Right. Well, and then there's the whole deal. We've talked about this before. It's been a long time, but we've talked about it before. Tobe Hooper directed Poltergeist, but people say all the time, really, Steven Spielberg directed it, but I don't know. I believe that Tobe Hooper directed it, probably with a lot of help from his friend, which, great. And I do see Spielbergian aspects in that movie, particularly when it comes to the relationships between the family. But the movie looks like a Tobe Hooper movie.
It does.
And again, it's one of my favorite movies. I can't believe we have done like 700. That's overshooting. We've done like 300 and some episodes, and we've never done Poltergeist, one of my very favorite movies. I think
sequel.
I know, but I think it's because I would never be able to stop talking about it. But I still think this movie looks great, at least up until this point. And then my next note, excellent aerial shot of the carnival at closing.
Yes. That's
there
really
are some
cool.
amazing crane shots in this movie.
And that's revisited later. But I also made a note about that. I think this is when Joey is alone there. The kids are already inside the fun house, and Joey looks up at the fun house and is freaked out. And then suddenly the creaking mannequin on top of it scares him. And then suddenly the old hag lady's behind him and goes, boo! And then he like runs away and climbs a fence out of the place. And oh, God, it's so dumb. But anyway, then he decides to, I don't know, break into a car. It's so weird because whatever's happening with Joey, we cut away from it right away. And we go right back into the kids making out in the funhouse. And maybe your screen was a little smaller than mine, but you could see her boobs again in there. Not that I was looking, but they were there.
Sure. Well,
yeah,
of
they were
course
there.
not.
Both of them. Yeah.
No, I was watching it on a computer screen. So
As soon as they're done making out, they hear something or they look down through the floorboards of this funhouse, and there's somebody down underneath. It turns out there's a whole other level to this. It must be underground.
a basement, at this traveling funhouse.
Traveling carnival. But anyway, there's the guy with the Frankenstein mask on, and he's going to get some money, and
He doesn't talk. He just mumbles. Madam Zena, you texted me. I had just started watching this movie, and you texted me something about it, and I don't remember when I said this to you, but I said I only remember one scene. This was the scene.
This is the one?
This was the scene that I remembered.
Go ahead, you explain it.
Well, I mean, God, it's really kind of pathetic. Like, you don't know what's going on with Frankenstein, but he doesn't talk. Like, he only just kind of mumbles, and he kind of like bumbles around a little bit. But he's like taking money out of the cash box, and at first he tries to give her a 20, and she's like, no, that's not enough. And he tries to give her a 50. Nope, it's not enough. And he finally gives her 100, and you figure out he's paying her for sex. But like, once he gives her the money, they lay down on the floor together, and she barely touches him. I don't remember what she says, but
she kind of starts jerking him off, and then it's like, oops, oh, well, I guess it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, I don't even know if he had gotten out of his pants yet. Like,
yeah.
But he must have, because she wipes her hand off. It's so gross. That's the part that I remember. Now, I think that ultimately the reason that I just don't know how to feel about this, because after that, I think he wants to try again, or he wants the money back or something, but she's resistant, and he kills her.
Yeah.
And the kids see all this, and then there's a whole scene of them like running around trying to get out, and apparently they can't. And then in the next scene, they end up exactly where they were before. Did you notice that?
In the same
That was so
pose.
weird, right?
That's why I thought there were some editing problems, or maybe something changed in the editing with the script. Like, why did these kids then hunker back down?
Exactly where they were before. Right.
Yeah.
Right above. I don't know. Oh, and Joey sneaks back in. Like, I've got notes about Joey, but nothing happens with him.
No, he sneaks back into the carnival. That's it. And now we're back inside the funhouse, which apparently has a second story. They're like climbing around up and down stairs. I think they go back down, and for some reason they think if they can cut through that room, they can find a way out. So they walk through it, and then, like you said, they're back in that spot.
The exact
and that's
same
when,
spot, right above the room.
And that's when the barker comes in downstairs. So here's the thing. This guy, when he kills this woman, pushes her up against an electric box, which makes it spark.
Okay, right.
And turns on all the lights, which were previously off inside there, and kind of makes all the animatronics go for a while. But then, when he walks in, the lights are off. But up above where the kids are, they're lit by all the stuff around them.
It looks great. It's a great shot. They're like...
I mean, that's a great shot, but it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense, but it looks great. They're like in front of... it looks almost like stained glass or something, like carnival lights behind them. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense why they're there, but it looks great.
Yeah, it does. It's a great tableau. I'm not gonna deny that at all. Well, he flips the switch back on somehow, and then he like looks around, he sees the girl, and he goes, "Oh, you really did it this time. You killed one of the family." And he starts slapping him around like crazy. And then he's like, "Oh, you know what? We'll dump her somewhere, and we're gonna blame it on the locals." But then
you paid her $100? Jesus, I could have got you one of them 10 girls for 15. Yeah. You never did understand the value of a dollar, did you?
Yeah, I thought that was funny too. But when he's yelling at him and like punishing him or whatever, I don't remember if somehow the Frankenstein mask comes off.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that under that mask, kind of inexplicably, because the mask that he that is supposed to be his actual face is like 2 times as big as the Frankenstein mask was. So I'm not really sure how that fit over his face. But he's got this monstrous face. You know, you and I talk about this. I don't think a movie like this would even be made today. This was not at all uncommon. Like monstrous, supposedly deformed people being villains in movies. Like I think that our culture is just too sensitive. Like people would come out of the woodworks. He is a human being, and it's not his fault that he was born that way. And like I get it. And, even me watching it, like I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
I felt bad for this guy.
But this guy crosses the line. He's almost like a vampire. He's not just like a I mean, he is deformed.
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah,
he's
yeah.
got yellow eyes that are bugged out, and like you said, his face is almost split down the middle.
He
and
looks very much like the cow. I can
Yeah,
only imagine
actually.
that was intentional. He looks very much like the cow that had the cleft palate.
He's like a quote-unquote freak, right? Like a circus
Yeah.
freak, really. And he's like Sloth in a way from Goonies.
Yes,
but,
right.
But and not even mean.
But that's the thing. Like, he seems... Right, no, he just seems childlike and doesn't know the appropriate
His
way to
strength.
deal with people, obviously.
Yeah. But in all this commotion, he's like beating him. They finds out all the money's missing, so he gets pissed. He's like, what did you do with the money? Where's the rest of the money? And he flips out. They're making all this noise. He's torn his mask out. And in the meantime, one of the kids' lighters falls on the ground from upstairs. And he hears that over the commotion that's going on. Anyway, all right, fine. It's a movie. So he turns around, he discovers the lighter and looks up and realizes there must be somebody up there. And now the kids are in trouble. Oh, in the meantime, Joey's outside, prowling around a little bit more, kind of bored. I'm thinking, he's going to find a way in to the funhouse. And, like, he's going to be their way out, or he's going to meet up with them, or something's going to happen. Well, the doors are still locked from the outside, but he finds one of the flags in the front, which is draped over kind of the bottom skirt of it. He lifts it, and there's, like, a hole there. And when he starts to peer into the hole, that monster guy reaches out at him. And he flips out, and he backs up. He doesn't come out. He just reaches out at him. And then he backs into the old hag and a bum, and one of the carnies grabs him anyway and whisks him away. Now we're back to the kids inside. Who, by the way, it's just, why did that happen?
Well, I don't know. And because I say he's scared and he gets grabbed by carnies, and then the only other thing that happens is, like, they call his parents, and his parents come get him, and some weird guy, like, that scene,
that was
whoever it was that called his parents, this guy that found him. Why is Joey unconscious?
I have no idea.
I don't remember. I don't have no idea.
Know.
But this guy's like, he's like, I found him and I cleaned him up real nice. And he's like stroking the kid's face. Meanwhile, the kid's parents are standing right there. I'm like, what is happening? Like, why is this weird guy stroking your child?
They think it's as weird as we do, clearly. And they're like, well, I guess we'll just take him home. But they're not moving a muscle. Wouldn't they, by now, have had him in their arms and been walking out to the car?
I don't know. It's bizarre.
It's so weird. They're just standing there staring. And like I said, there's so many shots of Amy just standing and staring. And we're back to the kids inside the funhouse, and they're making no great efforts to get out of this.
Well, they're trying, but...
Not really. They
the
sit
doors
down
are, like,
and
padlocked and
chat
stuff.
with each other. Like,
I suppose. Well, I jumped a little bit ahead because by the time that Joey is being stroked by a creepo, Amy is like, they're being chased around. Like, they've seen the monster, they're being chased around, and she tries to scream at her parents through an industrial fan, and they can't hear her.
Yeah, it's later, but yeah.
It's later, but what's the Barker guy tells... Do they ever call him Gunther? He's credited as Gunther.
Oh, no, I never heard his name.
I keep calling... That's what I'm calling him is. Well, maybe I just made it up, but that's what I'm going to call him from now on. The monster guy. The Barker tells Gunther to kill the kids. Like, he's like, we're just going to clean this up. You kill them and we'll dump them somewhere. We'll get out of here or whatever. And then I don't understand some of the things that happen. Like... you're right. Like, the four kids are just, like, sitting around chatting.
Yes.
When from nowhere, a noose drops from the ceiling right onto Richie's head and hangs him.
Pulls him up into out of their reach into the supposed rafters of this place. Now this funhouse is like 2 or 3 stories tall and has rafters so high up nobody can see. I just unbelievable.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
And then I guess Buzz has an axe, and they see somebody coming in one of the cars. He's like, I got this. And he, like, axes and it's Richie. So he axes Richie in the head. So I assume Richie was already dead. I assume he was already
He's
dead.
just tied up on the car.
This is just nutty. Like, are they setting up these traps? Because then
Immediately,
out of nowhere, Liz just falls through a trap door. Like, and she's just gone.
why in this funhouse that is on a rail? It's not a thing you can walk through. Why is there a trap door next to the railing that opens up and then closes, and they can't open it up?
No.
Like, did somebody trigger that?
I don't know.
Is it do they do this all the time? Like, it doesn't make sense. It's just silly movie stuff.
Well, they are a murderous carnival.
No.
The Barker guy does, like, he says to Gunther, like, you're all the time getting in trouble or something. I have to clean up after you, like those two girls back in whatever. And they had said, that these twin girls had gone missing after this carnival had gone through. That's why Amy's dad didn't want them to go. So they do kill people sometimes.
But the way it's not an H.H. Holmes situation where they deliberately set this thing up to hope that kids are going to stay the night in there.
Accidentally kill people sometimes.
But it's mostly set up. The way that he says it to him is because, well, this guy's slow and he doesn't know what he's doing, and just like he killed the fortune teller, he's killed other people too, and he's got to clean up after him. I don't think it's like the idea is that the whole carnival thing is like on this killing spree.
No. That's why I said just, like
every now and then.
they they have to take care of things, and they do.
So now, and this was confusing. Now, like you said, Joey outside with his parents, staring at the funhouse in a daze as they're getting ready to leave. And then out of nowhere comes his thoughts, which is, I'm going to get even with you. I'm going to get back at you so bad that you're never going to forget it.
Yeah, it felt... I had no idea what was happening. It felt like it was from a different movie. Like, I get it that it's a callback, but what is he thinking? Is he thinking that this is some elaborate plot that his sister has put into motion?
What's the point?
Like, it doesn't
no
make
idea.
any sense, and it doesn't matter because we never see him again.
We don't. But we do see... Yes, which is annoying.
I want to talk about this next part because... You alluded to it earlier, and I was surprised by the way that you alluded to it, because Liz, who fell through the trapdoor, wakes up. I have no idea where this is supposed to be.
This is supposed to be... It looks... It's a narrow passageway with a bunch of pipes and things going down. I don't know if it's supposed to be like a ventilation system.
I guess, because there's a giant fan.
Tunnel. There's a giant fan at the end of it, and that's where she is. And, of course, my first thought was, well, just stop that fan. It looks like it leads outside. You can crawl out of it. She's down there, and she wakes up, and suddenly around the corner is the monster guy, and he's coming towards her. And she's, like, crying and upset and begging and pleading for her life. And she's like, I heard that you like girls. Like, I can do things for you. I won't even make you pay. It's all right. You can... Oh, my God. That was so painful. It's disturbing.
When you alluded to it earlier, like, she says she has to say all these horrible things to him. Like, I didn't think it was that big a deal. Like, I know you like girls. I could be nice to you. You don't even have to pay. Like,
as he's coming towards her, literal drool is coming out of his mouth on her. He's leaning in close. He's getting drool all over. He's wrapping his arm.
It's disgusting, but what does it say? What does it say about me that I felt more bad for him in this moment?
Well, he's a sympathetic character for sure.
Yeah, like... I understand that she's doing what she has to do. Like, she's trying to... I understand what she's doing. But from his point of view, a pretty girl is being nice to him.
A pretty girl he is menacing is being
I guess.
nice to him.
I suppose.
Why else is he down there and coming after her?
No,
Because
you're right. You're right. I'm reading. I'm reading too much into it. But I did. I felt bad for him. Like, this poor guy.
Well, there's no question. You're meant to feel bad for him. He's sort of like a Frankenstein. I mean, there's probably no question why he's got the Frankenstein mask on earlier, right? That's intentional. He's supposed to be the the sympathetic monster who just doesn't know what he's doing. But she somehow, I guess,
she stabs him.
Yeah, I guess the
from a
dagger
knife
got
that she
down
just
there with
found.
him.
I don't know. There's just a knife around there, and then he kills her. Like, question mark. But you don't really see it. You don't really see it happen.
Actually, it's a cool angle where you don't see it, but you see kind of from above, and it's obscured a little bit, but then you see his hand raised a couple times, and his fingernails are all bloody, and it's pretty clear she's not going to make it. At the same time, dumbass Amy is standing in front of a huge fan. I don't know if this is another passageway. I don't know how she got there, but this fan is apparently right smack dab on the front of the funhouse, and it's about half as tall as a person is. And she's screaming out at her parents, who she can see out there, but the fan is too loud, so her screams are not carrying, and they're too far away to notice.
Believable.
Once again, I was like, why would you not just grab something and stop that fan? Heck, I mean, the motor and the belt, it's right there in front of you. Like,
True.
Get a pipe, get something. Like, that's your best way out.
Right.
That you guys have found yet. You stop that fan, you guys can crawl out there. Then she just leaves, and they never come back to it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Plus, I never saw that fan from the front of the building. I couldn't figure out where the heck it could have been anyway.
I don't know.
And we get a lot of shots of the front of that funhouse. So.
You're right that it takes a long time to get to the action, but then this ending just happens so fast. Like, the Barker guy confronts Buzz and Amy with a gun, and then Buzz and the Barker fight, and the Barker guy gets impaled on a giant sword. Why would there be giant swords that are sharp enough to entirely impale a person?
It was a different time, Craig. Those carnivals.
Their insurance would never approve of that. I
love, but before he dies, I love what the Barker says, because he has this long soliloquy about family, and family's important, and blood is thicker than water. And he's talking about his boy, and he's like, and I'm sure he's going to be a great comfort to me in my old age.
Oh, yeah. That was funny.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know if that was meant to be silly or what, but...
and then Gunther, the monster guy, is,
out of nowhere.
But he attacks out of nowhere. And then, like, he and Buzz kind of tussle off screen. Like, we don't see it, and there are gunshots.
Oh.
And then
dude.
And then Buzz is dead and served up like on a
mechanical clown,
animatronic clown. It's hilarious.
That was on the track suddenly. Look, I'm sorry. I mean, Tobe Hooper is great, and he knows how to stage certain things. I don't know if fight scenes are one of them, because these two little tussles between the Carney and Buzz and Gunther were lame.
Fair enough.
There's several moments in there where Buzz is just standing there, and he has a perfect opportunity where the monster's back is to him, looking at his dad, to just throw him onto that sword along with him, and he just stands there, which is what the girls do in this movie whenever they're confronted.
Oh, yeah.
With the killer, and I hate that about...
Yeah, especially now that Buzz is dead. Amy is just kind of walking around being scared by the funhouse stuff.
God.
Like,
That
come
is so
on.
dumb.
And then I don't even remember this. I just have in my notes, Amy is in an industrial basement.
Yes. In my notes, I just have, where the is she? I don't know why she's down there. I don't know how she got there. She crawled through a vent or something. And now, this was, by the way, we've got the funhouse. We have the sub-basement below the funhouse where this family stays. She crawls down a vent even deeper to this below the sub-basement of the funhouse, which I guess includes all of the mechanics for having it
like big exposed gears, like
giant chains going by on hooks like around the room.
What was that all about?
There is nothing that complicated up above. Plus, there is a whole floor between the actual funhouse and this room. So she's down there in this industrial basement, and Gunther... Steam, by the way. Every now and then steam is coming out like...
Seriously, hooks on chain on a conveyor belt. Like, what is this? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. But he confronts her, and he screams at her, because he doesn't talk, he just screams.
No, before Before he confronts her, Craig, you cannot skip this. She spends about 8 minutes. I almost timed it. It's over 5 minutes just crawling around this room she could clearly see across and just freaking out. Just
I remember her finding bodies. She finds her friend's body, right? The girl.
That was before this, yeah. Down there, she's by herself waiting for that guy to come down. All right, sorry.
No, it's okay. And so he comes down and screams at her, and she hits him with the crowbar, but he grabs it and, like, goes to swing it at her, but accidentally gets electrocuted like by a fuse box,
and then accidentally his arm flops over onto the chain and he starts getting pulled around the room.
And what does she do? He's dead. She stands 6 inches in front of him,
follows him around the room 6 inches away from him, freaking out.
And then he wakes up slowly. Does she move? No, she just stands right there.
Screams a bunch while he slowly reaches his hand out and grabs her. I wanted to throw my computer at the TV at this point.
It was ridiculous.
And I couldn't believe, and I said, I'm telling you, I read this review that said, oh, the nail-biting, tense final scene, kind of makes up. I was like, are you kidding me? The final scene is stupid.
I thought it was funny. It is stupid, but it's kind of funny. And then, so, he's on the hook on the I don't know. And he gets pulled into, these big spinning gears and supposedly gets crushed or whatever. And the last scene is another. Well, first she walks out and she looks at the top of the funhouse. There's this big animatronic fat lady, and it laughs at her, which is kind of funny. I read that that's supposed to be oh, it's over because the fat lady's saying. Okay, cute, whatever. And then it's another great crane shot. When I say a great crane shot, I mean a great crane shot.
Yeah.
I read that this crane was enormous, 300 feet tall or something.
You'd have to be to get as high as it got.
Oh my God, it just pulls up and you see. But my favorite thing about that very final shot is that the rest of the carnies are just going about their business. Nobody knows what all has gone down in the funhouse all night, and they're just getting ready for the day. I loved it. Loved it.
And she kind of blends in with them, right? Because she's just almost looks as beat down as the rest of them.
Yeah, she does. I do not hate this movie. I don't hate it.
I've seen worse.
Yeah, I don't think it's a great movie, but I think it's interesting. I think that there are interesting things to say about it. Given the opportunity, I would be interested to hear Tobe Hooper or anybody else who is involved in it. You're right, I couldn't find a lot about it either in
you found
trying
more than
to
me.
research it.
Kudos. Yeah.
In trying to research it, I couldn't find a whole lot, which is disappointing. I love, behind the scenes stuff, but I would be interested. And for a filmmaker who's well respected by his prestigious peers, this is an early venture for him, and I think that it shows a lot of promise. Is it a great movie? No, absolutely not. The story is pretty stupid, but there are things about it. I think there's some I think there's some cool cinematography, some cool imagery, just suggestions of what he would do better later. I don't hate it.
I mean, I can see why at the time. I think at the time, 1981, the critic reviews were generally positive, and Gene Siskel gave it a positive. And I think the reason for that is because it stands out amongst what was there. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing these movies, right? It's usually just the dead teenager movies, like Roger Ebert called them. They're really stupid, they're just a bunch of people, and then they get hacked up, and it's all about how bloody can it be, and there's pretty much no story. This movie obviously stands out against that, and so it probably felt very fresh and original, even though a lot of it was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But with the stylized lighting and Tobe Hooper, up-and-coming guy, and something just different and unique probably really resonated with people. But looking at it now, again, I've seen much worse. There were some things to like in here, but I was bored, and I didn't find it scary. I found it downright silly at times, and not even intentionally silly. And I cannot get over. I really hate. I'm almost personally offended by horror movies where the female does nothing but stand there and scream and get killed. And it's almost a trope, right? But it's particularly bad in this movie. Maybe among the worst I've seen. There's never even an excuse given, like, oh, she fell down, or oh, she's backed up against a corner, or something like that. This girl at the end of the movie literally follows this guy around the room 6 inches away from him while she's freaking out and screaming. She should have been smarter than that. Anyway.
Yeah, I think your criticisms are totally fair. I don't disagree with anything that you said. That being said, if you haven't seen it, folks, watch it. I kind of
check it out. I think horror fans, we watch a lot of different stuff, and this is unique enough to check out. Just like I said, if you're looking for something to be terrified by, I'm not.
Oh no, it's not scary. No.
Cool. Well, thanks again, patrons, for recommending this movie. You too can be a patron if you go to patreon.com/Chainsaw Podcast. But also, we just like to hear from all of our fans. Whatever you thought of this podcast, whatever you thought of this movie, if you've seen it, just find us. 2 Guys and a Chainsaw Podcast is all you need to Google to pull up our Facebook page or Twitter page. Leave us a note there. Let us know what you think. Until next time, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With 2 Guys and a Chainsaw.